Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, it's Tuesday, January 30th, 2018, and you know what that means. It's time to get nerdy, y'all. Welcome to episode number 58 of Two Nerds in a Pod, the nerdiest gaming podcast in the galaxy. I'm Lam, also known as Mr. Nice Guy, and I got my comrade in gaming commentary and goofiness here with me, the miggity Mac, also known as Maction. Mac, what's up, buddy? How you been?
I've been all right. Just keeping my head above water. You know, some days it feels like you're treading, but I'm doing all right this time around.
Dude, now I don't want you to express any type of guilt, but yesterday was a very special day.
It was your anniversary.
No.
Another
type of special day.
It was your birthday?
It was. It was my birthday yesterday, and it was an awesome day.
No.
So, dude, I got to tell you, I got for my birthday, my wife got me do you know what a sous vide is? It's a cooker.
Oh, it's one of those things. Yeah, it's like a cooker thing.
Yeah, so you put it in water, and it keeps the water at a temperature. You put your food in a plastic bag, immerse it in the water, and it cooks it perfectly all the way through. Now, if you listen to the podcast or just know me, you know I'm big into grilling, big into the cooking of meat. So we did some amazingly big steaks, and I wish there was a way to show you a picture of these steaks, Mac. They were 3 inches thick, 8 inches wide, 3 pounds, some of the biggest steaks that I've ever seen. So we did those in the sous vide. We seasoned them. They cooked for about 2 hours in the sous vide. We seared them in a cast iron on the stove, and they were fantastic. It was one of the coolest birthday presents I've ever gotten. Now, Mac, the cool thing about this sous vide, man, is that it's Wi-Fi enabled. So I could put something that's frozen in water with the sous vide, go to work, and I can start it from my phone while I am 60 miles away. Come home to a perfectly cooked steak or brisket or whatever. Briskets would take longer, but regardless, Mac, it's a very cool cooking thing. When you come to Chicago, I am going to sous vide you a meat of your choice. It was a fantastic birthday, dude. It was a great day. Now you get to top that with telling me about your week, Mac. Buddy.
I don't know if I can, but I'm thrilled that I will be serenaded by sous vide. It'll be fantastic. Gosh, my week. Okay. Let me tell you. So I've got a motorcycle that I love dearly, Mr. Nice Guy.
Yep.
And it's an old one. And it's got a little black box called a IC igniter because it's a transistor controlled ignition unit, controls when the sparks happen, all those things. Anyway, these things are they are very hard to come by because they're not something that has simple or easy replacements. They only made so many. Over time, units break and there's not much available. So when you do find another unit, they are crazy expensive.
I bet.
Fortunately, though, I was able to find one just in the past little while that was super inexpensive. I mean, by super inexpensive, I mean people are asking like $150 for one of these things, and I was able to get one for $50. So
that's sweet, dude. Now they're super hard to find. So are they made by Nintendo?
Close, made by Yamaha.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, they're just hard to find because what, you can't just get any igniter to replace. You have to get one for the same thing because any little change that was made between years or between models in electrical systems is taken into account. It's not a computer that kind of assesses when the spark needs to happen. It's sort of this pre-timed, hard-coded, pre-timed ignition curves. If you don't have the right one, I mean, it's probable that it'll just, not work or not function properly, but it's always possible that you could totally ruin your engine by, having spark coming at the wrong time. So it could lead to a whole host of problems if you don't have the right one, and of course, it's hard to get your hands on. So I'm just glad I've got a backup now.
That's fantastic, dude. Well, good stuff, Mac. And on that note, now people know we have hobbies outside of gaming. I'm into cooking meats. You're into the motorcycling madness. I say we hop right into what we do best, though, and that's gaming news. What do you think, man?
I think we must.
Let's do this. Once again, welcome to those of you who are here with the live, or for the live recording, I should say. This is episode number 58, Mac. We're 58% of the way to 100 episodes. We're going to get there, y'all. So we got some awesome news stories related to the video of the games. And which one should we start with? Let's start with this one, because I think it is just an interesting topic, Mac. So this deals with Twin Galaxies. If you didn't know, they are the ones who track video game records. And it says that one of the longest, this is on Polygon, one of the longest standing video game records declared impossible, thrown out after 35 years. It says Twin Galaxy, the video game record keeper and official source of Guinness World Records, has declared one of the oldest video game world records invalid after 35 years. Player Todd Rogers has been stripped of his world record for finishing the simple Atari 2600 racing game Dragster after months of debate over his completion time. Quote, based on the complete body of evidence presented in the official dispute thread, Twin Galaxy's administrative staff has unanimously decided to remove all of Todd Rogers' scores, as well as ban him from participating in our competitive leaderboards, reads a post on the Twin Galaxies forum from the organization's staff. So I'm going to skip some of the opinion pieces, but here are the opinion parts. But here are the facts in this article. It says, in 1982, Rogers submitted to Activision's official fan newsletter a time of 5.51 seconds, which the company recognized in print, awarding Rogers a patch. Twin Galaxies later added Rogers to its own leaderboards in 2001, and Guinness World Records awarded the player with the honor of holding the world's longest standing gaming record in April of 2017. That's not that long ago. It says, yet Rogers never provided recorded or other proof of his 5.51 time in Dragster, a sticking point in the years that followed. So I'm just going to summarize this so we don't talk about this for too long. Effectively, Mac, this guy submitted a record to a newsletter 35 years ago. The newsletter said, yeah, we'll put this in the newsletter. And that was his only proof for the record of this game. He didn't have any video proof. He didn't have any audio proof or any screenshots. This was 35 years ago. The rules have changed. Now to hold a world record, you have to have some type of proof. They've stripped him of his record and banned him, Mac, from ever participating again. Is that over the top or is that justified? I got to get your thoughts on this, man. You're a speedrunning expert. It's kind of a similar realm where proof is required, but is this too much?
Well, I am speedrunning adjacent on account of many of my friends, but that being said, within the speedrunning community that I've interacted with, I feel like the general opinion is that Twin Galaxies has been kind of a joke for quite some time, and a lot of people in the speedrunning community haven't really either paid attention or haven't really given much weight to Twin Galaxies things, because I've heard a lot of people complain about stuff like this, about things like, well, there's this record, it's up there, it doesn't have much, it doesn't have any, what have you, evidence to back this up. I think this particular chapter of this Dragster score is a fake. At least I hadn't heard much about it until there was a particular hacker, I guess, called Ben Heck, if you've heard of him. But Ben Heck programmed an interface so that he could have a computer do the inputs on Dragster and try to get that time, and more or less concluded that that he couldn't make it work. He couldn't get Dragster to go that fast, even with having a computer do the inputs so that it could be perfectly consistent, couldn't reproduce it. And that's, at least, there may have been some questions before, but that was certainly where this most recent conversation got ignited with this is fake, we need to do something about it. And
this is like some Lance Armstrong stuff, though. I mean, in that it's a long-standing thing that later on gets challenged. Yeah, and it's not only been removed, but he's been banned from participating in the future.
Yes, and
That
I apologize. You were pretty direct about that question.
no, you're
If I
okay.
felt it was a, but what I was saying is that what I was getting to with that is that it's the problem is, do you want to trust any of the other records at face value? And I think, I mean, I don't know, I haven't gone through his records, but I think that the majority of his records don't have proof applied.
Well,
So
and
it's one of those things where, I mean, what's going on?
I mean, any record from 35 years ago is probably not going to have proof. You know what I mean? They didn't require as much proof back then, and frankly, who gave him this record? It was Twin Galaxies, based on a news article in an Activision newsletter. So, if anything, they can strip him of the record, that's fine, but I don't think they can ban him from participating in the future because they're the ones who gave legitimacy to the record without proof, and just because they changed their criteria and now to have a world record in a video game, you got to have video, you got to have screenshots and blah, blah, blah. Someone has to watch it live. To me, they shouldn't be banning him from all future participation, but that's just my opinion. That's how I see it.
I think there comes a point at which, I mean, yes, they should have asked for more information or required some sort of confirmation before giving things, giving stuff away. But, when you have a record that's been challenged and nobody's been able to beat it for quite some time, things like that, I mean, do we really want to let somebody off the hook for letting a lie continue? Because if it's physically impossible to get that score on Dragster or to get that time or whatever, if it is impossible to do and you don't have proof and you say you did it just because other people let it slide for one reason or another, doesn't really let you off the hook for kind of trying to make a mockery of the I don't want to say of the sport, but of the legitimacy of the whole practice. So getting rid of somebody for it, I mean, I think that's kind of the only option, really.
Cool.
Because I mean, in spite of not requiring a higher standard of evidence, that doesn't let somebody off the hook for letting those lies continue and contributing to a delegitimacy of the whole endeavor, I think.
That's a good point. Well, we'll leave it at that. We got some awesome news stories to continue the day. Now, Mac, I've never been a World of Warcraft guy, but I have always been intrigued by it. So we have a story about that on Polygon today. It says Blizzard announced today that the pre-purchase for World of Warcraft's 7th expansion, Battle for Azeroth, is live. While we don't have an exact date on when the expansion will launch on live servers, the pre-order itself comes with some exciting perks. Purchasing Battle for Azeroth will grant players a character boost that can be used on any character and will instantly level them up to 110, the current maximum level pre-battle for Azeroth. Blizzard has been offering these instant boosts since Warlords of Draenor, the game's 5th expansion, was available for pre-purchase back in 2014. What's far more exciting about this pre-purchase is the inclusion of the new Allied Races system. When Battle for Azeroth was first announced, Blizzard showed off 6 new races. The Nightborn Elves, the High Mountain Tauren, and Zandalari Trolls are joining the Horde, while the Void Elves, Lightforged Draenei, and Dark Iron Dwarves will be joining the Alliance. Not going to read the whole article. I've always been intrigued with World of Warcraft, but I feel like unless you got in within the first year or two, you can't really jump in at this point. That's just kind of my opinion. I feel like it's so deep. People already have their guilds. It's not like Call of Duty where there's a new entry and you can kind of hop in and learn and get some friends. This is something that's deep. Like, there's relationships that are over a decade in this game. Mac, have you ever tried this? I know they have it for free sometimes to preview. Is this your type of thing or no?
No, but only because, Mr. Nice Guy, I am so very worried about getting sucked in a bad way. Anytime we've got a game without a solid ending and without something I can kind of plan around in a simple, easy way, I am destined, directioned, determined to have my entire life consumed by it, which is something I regret later. Happened with Minecraft, it'll happen with anything. So I avoid it Not because I don't think I could get into it, but because I'm too worried about getting into it, Mr. Nice Guy.
And that's the thing, man. So I had some roommates in college, and all they did, man, was play World of Warcraft. And it was like to the point that when the internet went out one time, they were walking around like zombies and they had no idea what to do because they couldn't play World of Warcraft because they couldn't raid with their guild. It was crazy. Like they would come home and they'd be like, yo, I got a raid. I don't have time to get food. I got to hop on this raid. And as a gamer, I get it. But also as a gamer who is a father and has other things going on, I don't get it. Like, you've got to have other stuff going on in your life besides just that. You know what I mean? Unless you're doing it as a career, which at the time Twitch wasn't nearly as relevant, you've got to have other stuff going on. But it's always intrigued me. I've always thought, wow, if I got into that game, I bet I could have a lot of fun. It just seems like it would be a huge learning curve. I have someone in the chat right now, Pazzy160, who's saying that it's not too late to jump in. So who knows? Maybe when they do one of those free previews, I'll give it a shot. But I think my wife would probably be upset. So anyway, that's that. World of Warcraft. What else do we got this week as far as the news stories go? Let's talk about... We'll talk about EA for a little bit. Mac's favorite company in all of gaming. There's a story behind that, but we won't get into it unless Mac wants to get into it again.
No, it's a quick story. EA snubbed me personally. There we go.
Yeah, you were trying to do some game reporting, and some things happened. So anyway, this story comes from GameInformer.com. It says, in their quarterly earnings call today, Electronic Arts confirmed a new Battlefield title for this holiday season and indicated that Respawn's Star Wars action game will release in the 2020 financial year. Electronic Arts executives Andrew Wilson, Patrick Soderlund, and Blake Jorgensen announced that a new Battlefield game would release this year and praised the success of the Battlefield IP, especially as Battlefield 1 ended up becoming the biggest game in the series. No other details were provided, but Battlefield 1 was revealed by DICE ahead of E3, so presumably EA will do something similar again. I'm not going to get too much into it. I love Battlefield. I did skip Battlefield 1, and I did skip... Actually, I think I had Battlefield 4 for a while and then got rid of it. It's one of those games. It's fantastic. It's team-based. But I feel like we have reached the age, and I know this is cliche to say, but we've reached a time where there are just too many good games. I mean, there's just too many. And so to have a multiplayer game that requires squad-based gameplay and requires you to kind of have teammates that consistently play it, the reality is that unless you're doing it for esports, it's just not going to happen. You know, you get a game like that, it's hot the first week, everybody's in, you're playing it, and then guess what? A couple weeks later, something else awesome comes out, or your schedules don't match up, or, you know, some things happen, and so you're playing with randoms, and it's just not as fun. And so games like Battlefield, as fantastic as they are, it's just hard to really get a lot of longevity out of them due to scheduling and due to the team-based combat that really is what makes it fun.
Counterpoint, Mr. Nice Guy.
Let's hear it.
World of Warcraft requires all those things, has been popular for 10 years, plus is in its eighth DLC release or some such like that. 7th. So, you know, I mean, I think the problem is just that we're not dedicated enough, Mr. Nice Guy.
That's a really good point. Although the one thing I'll say is that I would say World of Warcraft established its fan base over a decade ago when there weren't as many options as there are now. Additionally, it's a PC game. And in my experience, PC games have much more dedicated communities than console games. You know, if you look at some of the old PC games, there's still, you know, Team Fortress 2, for example, still a huge community for Team Fortress 2 on PC. On the Xbox Orange Box, there's not nearly as big a community. So I think that PC communities, people really get into it and stick with it. I could be wrong, though. You probably know more about that than I do. But I get your point. It's a very, very valid point. That guys like you and me, we just aren't committed enough to one game. Maybe we have short attention spans. I don't know. But I think what you're saying is valid. So now, Mac, on that point, though, we're getting a new Star Wars game, potentially, in fiscal year 2020. I think I may have asked you this before, but what's the best Star Wars game you've ever played? Star Wars based game.
X-Wing, TIE Fighter, X-Wing versus TIE Fighter. You know, I really enjoyed the space fight simulation. I thought it was great. So I would put those at the top of my list.
Okay. See, now someone in the chat, Pazzy160, is agreeing with you, Mac. He's saying, this sounds more like a personal situation. He says, I can still get a weekly group together for Arma 3 after 2 to 3 years. That's a good point, dude. I guess it really depends on who you are and what you're playing. So, but let me ask you this. It's on PC, once again, Pazzy. That's not on console. So that kind of goes back to what I was saying. But regardless, let's keep it moving. We're already 20 minutes in. Let's do one more news story, and then we will hop into some other things. What do we want to talk about? Let's talk about Anthem being delayed. It says Electronic Arts confirmed today that Anthem, BioWare's upcoming online multiplayer RPG, is now scheduled for release in early 2019. Refusing to call Anthem's postponed release date a delay, EA CFO Blake Jorgensen described the game's shifting release date as a result of smart scheduling. Anthem was originally scheduled for release in late 2018. Do you buy that, Mac, or no? I don't either. We'll end it on that, and that is our news for the week. Mac, it's all you, buddy.
All right. Well, now that we've taken a look at some of the stuff to come and some of the stuff going on around us right now, I want to take a moment and look into the past. Now, normally I pick several games that we talk about, we reminisce about, but I just want to talk about one, arguably one of the most important ones, certainly. Final Fantasy Tactics, released this past week in 1998 for the PS1. Now, I'm going to just bundle in real quick that I've mentioned before. Shmupulations is the name of a website wherein you can find translated developer interviews. Basically, it's like part of what they do is they translate interviews from Japanese magazines. Developer interviews and such, and I'm going to be referencing an interview as I talk about Final Fantasy Tactics in a minute that comes courtesy of Shmupulation's Japanese translation from Japanese. So just wanted to give a shout out and say thanks, because there were some really good things in there. So Final Fantasy Tactics, I love this game. It is my favorite Final Fantasy game, period. Now, they've returned to the same thing, unlike most of the Final Fantasy games where you have each game is completely separate, there's no connection. Final Fantasy Tactics was actually set in a game world that was revisited twice, arguably twice, in the Final Fantasy franchise. Vagrant Story, while not called a Final Fantasy game, occurs in the kingdom, in the land of Ivalice, same place as Final Fantasy Tactics, as well as Final Fantasy 12 occurs there as well. So I think that kind of gives this sort of unique position of having been revisited more than just Final Fantasy X and Final Fantasy X-2, because I don't believe we've returned to any of the other Final Fantasy things aside from that. Anyway, Final Fantasy Tactics, fantastic. A strategy RPG.
Yep.
Which was definitely new ground for Final Fantasy, or for the Final Fantasy franchise. As a matter of fact, in their interview that was translated where I mentioned previously, they mentioned that they really went in a witting direction to try and do things differently from the previous Final Fantasy installments, that they wanted something. Now, it is amusing that they say that they wanted it in the Final Fantasy world, and I think maybe that might be better translated as franchise, because Tactics was the first in its own world, just like all the rest of the Final Fantasy games. But they talk about making very witting decisions to change things up and do things very differently. One thing that, of course, was really cool is that the Final Fantasy combat, or in Tactics, takes place on grids of about 16 by 16, which they chose because they were going to be able to keep Final Fantasy Tactics running at 60 frames per second fairly consistently, which is something that had been very easy to do with the cartridge-based games. But what with the change over to CDs, while that meant that they had more, they could put more information down, because let's not forget, on a cartridge, the largest of the cartridge-based games for, like, say, the Nintendo 64. And you know what? Now that I'm thinking about it, I'm actually going to pull up. I've got a ROM file here, so that I can confirm without sounding ridiculous.
It's a good point of reference.
But I was going to say here. Let's see, ROM sets. Where is 64? Okay, we'll just go to any given one. Yeah, it's looking like some of the larger ones are about 32 megabytes. Mm-hmm. Probably something, let's see, Legend of Zelda is definitely where we're going to find the big ones. Yeah, 32 megabytes is about where we tap out in Nintendo 64 stuff. But when we get to the CD-based games, we can do things with, 600, 700 megabytes, getting close to a gigabyte in size. It's madness.
You know what's interesting, though, is some of those old games actually had, like, pretty substantial experiences, even with 32 megabytes. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. And there are plenty of games that are much larger in size that deliver a much less satisfying experience, both from storyline and even mechanics. So, I mean, absolutely, a size does not necessarily translate there. But what they were certainly fighting against was that they had more space, yes, but there was a tendency for things to drop below 60 frames per second when being placed on these laser-based systems, but that the transition or the decision to go for those was primarily in the ability to tell more expansive stories. So they specifically designed the game around ways that they could try and make sure that they had much higher frames per second and more, immersive experiences. So, what I do have to say, though, about Final Fantasy Tactics, why it's so near and dear to my heart, is that of all of the stories that I've ever heard presented in video games, Final Fantasy Tactics has always resonated with me more than anything else that a Final Fantasy has ever done. And I think the most important thing is that in the game, you start out small fries, small potatoes. You start out as not really anything to write home about. And nobody calls you the chosen one. You are never at any point in time the one in possession of the magical powers that will save the world. The whole thing opens up talking about how it's a historian who opens the whole game by saying, so we all know that this is how history went, right? And there was this guy and he did this and it was all cool. But guess what? Turns out that's all crazy talk. It was this dude none of you have ever heard of before who did all the good things, and the other dude was kind of a jerk. And it goes from there, telling your story. You're the unsung hero. You're the one who faded into obscurity. And it starts that way, and it really delivers at the end. Everybody thinks you're dead. You're a disgraced member of a royal house that's been disowned and declared a heretic by the church. I mean, there is nothing about I should say the storyline really doesn't hold back. The hits just keep on coming, and it keeps to a theme. And at the end, you do get a moment where everybody thinks you're dead, but you're not dead, and
Spoiler alert.
Yes, you ride off into the sunset, of course. So it's got this sort of happy ending, but at the same time, you don't get the accolades. There's no big parades for you saving the world like you get in almost all the other Final Fantasy games. In a lot of ways, it breaks from that sort of those sort of general tropes, and that's one of the things that I just love about it so much. I could actually take or leave the strategy component of this strategy RPG. That's not what reels me in. It's not what keeps me. And amusingly enough, in the interview, they actually talked about how they wanted to make sure that the combat was something that was so good that even if the story wasn't great, that you would keep coming back for the combat. And I feel the absolute opposite way, that the combat almost keeps me away, but the story is so good, it keeps pulling me in. So yeah, anyway, Final Fantasy Tactics, near and dear to my heart. It is, without question, I think, one of the greatest games ever made.
Ooh, that's a bold claim. That's a bold claim.
And it is no doubt the best of the Final Fantasies. So yeah, that's my take on it. And if you want to fight me, come fight me. I will say one thing here. Where was the last one? I will leave this one item from the developer interview that I thought was great. This is from Matsuno, who says, as a developer with a major series like Final Fantasy, you don't normally expect to be able to make a lot of radical changes. But with Final Fantasy Tactics, we wanted to undertake a brand new challenge. I know that when people hear strategy RPG, they think of a genre for hardcore niche gamers, but our game isn't like that. I hope you'll find it to be a novel discovery. And even though it's years and years later since this 98, so it's 20 years since this 1998 interview was done, just previous to the release. But I found it to be a novel discovery and one of my favorites. So thank you from the bottom of my heart for Final Fantasy Tactics. And that's just a little bit of gaming history for you today.
That wasn't just gaming history. That was a love letter to
darn straight
to Final Fantasy. This fall, y'all, Final Fantasy Solo Cast featuring Maction. I could see.
Oh well, hey, we could do it. I could totally do it.
Yeah, I don't know enough about it, but anyway, well, that was fantastic. Our next segment, you guys, it's called Our Topic of the Week, where we talk about something that's relevant in gaming today and how it affects the industry. And this week's story comes from the Inquirer, but it's a legitimate story. It's not the National Enquirer. It's titled Microsoft. You know what? Let's not read the title. Let's just read the article. Because I find whenever I read the title, then the first sentence of the article says the exact same thing, and it just gets to be redundant. So it says, someone has given the rumor mill an almighty kick, as it's been suggested that Microsoft is considering buying up game publishing behemoths EA and Steam, along with PUBG Corporation. And it doesn't talk about Valve in here, but it's also being suggested that Microsoft is thinking about buying Valve. Polygon cites a, quote, reliable source, unquote, close to Microsoft, who has allegedly tipped it off about Redmond's gaming ambitions. Rumors of such acquisitions appear to have been fueled by the promotion of long-term Xbox figurehead Phil Spencer, who will now head up Microsoft's leadership team, a move that shows, there's so many typos in this, that Redmond is serious about its gaming division. But the Xbox One, even with the most powerful console in the world, the Xbox One X under its wing, still lags behind Sony's PlayStation 4 in terms of overall sales. Many would claim that it is due to a lack of captivating exclusive games, so buying the biggest names in gaming could be one way past this. EA is one of the biggest players in gaming and one of Mac's favorite companies, with a net value of around $7 billion. It didn't really say that in the article. And Valve grew from a small startup into a massive game developer. Oh, it does talk about Valve in here. Publisher and gaming platform maker, so it's not short of cash either. Relatively new form PUBG Corporation soared in value thanks to the success of Battle Royale-inspired PlayerUnknown Battlegrounds and is now worth a few $billion. So, Mac, bottom line, if Microsoft purchases EA, Valve, and PUBG Corporation, we are not going to see any of those games on PlayStation 4. We're not going to see them on Nintendo. They're going to be on PC, and they're going to be on Xbox. So here's the $1 million question. If Microsoft purchases these companies, what are the chances of us seeing Half-Life 3?
Actually, I think the chances would increase if Microsoft bought Valve, because when you consider the game companies that Microsoft has worked with in the past, with large, with big titles, they've tried to produce. I think probably the most obvious one is Halo, right? They picked up Bungie and made Halo 1 to launch as the exclusive for the original Xbox. And then they followed it up a few years later with Halo 2. We had a few more years, and then Halo 3, Halo 4, and then ODST. I feel like if there's a big intellectual property like that they pick up, especially something as near and dear to as many people's hearts as the Half-Life franchise, I actually think that the odds are that we would have Half-Life 3. I mean, I think that we're more likely to get it if Microsoft were to purchase it, because they're not going to be willing to let that opportunity pass them by.
We could get Half-Life 3, we could get Portal 3, we could get Left 4 Dead 3, we could get all of those. Now, one small correction to what you said is Microsoft actually did not own Bungie. They contracted Bungie to make Halo. They had a 10-year contract with Bungie. Bungie made it for 10 years. Microsoft owned the Halo intellectual property, kind of kicked Bungie out, and then 343 Studios took over with making Halo.
Gotcha. I appreciate the clarification.
No, you're good, man. Just for those watching at home, keeping score. So, but I get.
But I will say though that I'm all for Microsoft purchasing EA, especially because EA has the tendency to buy up smaller studios and then shut them down. So I don't know how that makes financial sense, but that's what they do. But maybe that'll stop it. Give them a taste of their own medicine.
Yeah, it could be, dude. And they also have a tendency of starting Star Wars games and then not finishing them. So we'll see. Maybe Microsoft can turn that around. Now, I think that if they purchase Valve and all these companies, that we will see a lot of exclusives only on their consoles. And I think it will help with sales, especially if they were to bring out Half-Life 3. That I don't know if it would be a system seller, but I think that there is a rabid fan base that really wants that game, that has given up on it ever happening. So if it did happen, I think it would be huge news, and I think it might even be overhyped to the point of selling consoles, but then resulting in disappointed customers who purchased it. Because I don't think here's the thing: if Half-Life 3 came out, do you think you would even enjoy it at this point, Mac? Or do you think that it's been too long between entries that it's kind of lost some of the excitement that would come?
No, I actually think I would probably enjoy it. I think that we've had enough time to grapple with the idea of never having Half-Life 3 that we would probably receive it with open arms if it came. And I don't know. It might actually make us, maybe somewhat more critical than overhyped, because that's kind of the thing. You don't want too much hype, obviously, because if something fails to deliver, then you're very disappointed. Destiny. Sometimes it's nice to have your expectations tempered, and time does a good job of tempering expectations. So
that's a good point. It's a valid point. So. Anyway, we'll see what happens if Microsoft makes these purchases. It could mean that the next gen of Xbox is straight fire, son, because there'd be all these amazing exclusives that make people want to buy it. Additionally, Windows 10 would have these games as well. So, and with that, just so we remind you, last week we spoke about how anyone who purchases the Xbox Games Pass will have access to all Microsoft exclusives. So if Microsoft was to purchase these up, all those who pay $10 a month for the Game Pass would get all of those exclusive games for free. So it could make a huge difference in selling the console and in their Xbox Game Pass subscriptions. That has been our topic of the week. Mac, back over to you, buddy.
All right. Well, as you all know, we like to take a look at some of the games that are being crowdfunded currently. And we like to present one for your consideration. Mr. Nice Guy and I talk a little bit about some of the virtues and some of the vices, and at the end, we give our determination, and we encourage you as well to let us know what you think by voicing whether you think this should be kickstarted or you think it should be kicked out of here because it's garbage. And for today, we have for your consideration Genesis Noir. Let me start by saying that I am at once not entirely sure what to make of it, and at the same time also very, very intrigued.
Dude,
The art style.
I knew you were gonna say intrigued.
I'm just super predictable, but the art style is very very interesting. The whole setting is very psychedelic at times. It is at heart an adventure game, and I love adventure games. They are, if not my favorite, then my second favorite genre. Sometimes it's very hard for me to pin down which is my favorite, but adventure games hold a great place in my heart and always will. This is a very mind-bendy, time-travel-y thing with primordial Earth and jazz cafes. Time travel and universe warping, even much more so than some of the tame entrants that could claim those sorts of things. Like Braid, for example, was fun. You had time travel, and you also had this hidden subtext to everything that revealed itself at the end of the game. So there's a twist in Braid. Be ready for it. But nice visuals. It seems to strike a lot of the same chords in me when I consider it. But at its heart, it's an adventure game. They have a reasonable request for funding. They're thinking that they can do it in 40,000, which seems somewhat reasonable, and they're planning on delivering closer to December 2019, which seems like a pretty reasonable goal that they'll be delivering not this December, but the following December. So we're looking for a 2-year development cycle is what we're going for. Now, that being said, I haven't heard or seen any games made by this particular studio, which of course would give me a cause for concern. But they do have a little bit of a teaser that you can try out, or as I like to call it, a playable demo.
Required.
So yeah, Mr. Nice Guy, what's your take on it, sir?
Man, just in the few minutes I've been looking at it, I'm really, really on the fence, and I'm trying to check out the credentials of these people working on the game. Looks like these people have some experience working for smaller studios. At least the one person does, working in New York. Both of them actually working at different places in New York. One of them is a speedrunner as well. Surprise Attack Games, blah, 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 blah. I'm just reading about it. Mac, I kind of like the look. It kind of reminds me of like a dumbed down Limbo, if that makes sense. Just the graphics, really dark and not a lot of color. They did, to be fair, they put a lot of time into this Kickstarter. It looks like it's well put together. I'm really on the fence with this one, though. I'll be honest. I don't think it's my type of thing, but that doesn't mean that it doesn't deserve to be kickstarted. So, in fact, it reminds me a lot of Limbo. So, you know what? I'm going to make my vote based on that, but I'll wait for you to ask us for votes.
Okay. So, that being said, we all know that I have a requirement. It's not a huge requirement, but it is a required requirement. It's important to me, and that is that there be a playable demo so that I can get a feel for if you have the chops to as a team, because regardless of what your creative expertises are, anybody can throw together a group of people that may or may not work well together, whose skills don't complement each other, and they can't put together something that plays well or feels well. So a playable demo is a must for me to go out on a limb. Now, I'm not going to lie. I'm I think $15 I is right there on the fence with everything. Like I said, I am intrigued but unsure at the same time. But I think everything taken together and the fact that there is a demo, they call it a teaser that we can experience and get a feel for how it's going to work. I think my vote is for Kickstart.
Now, I just found something that kind of swayed me one direction. So, when you look in the About section for this game, it shows a bunch of awards that these folks have won or been nominated for. It looks like the NYS Game Dev Challenge, Day of the Devs, Fantastic Arcade, official selection of Fantastic Arcade, Unreal Dev Game Grant recipient, UCLA Game Art Festival. So the fact that these people are out making the rounds and getting some recognition, even on a small level, leads me to believe that this really is a passion project. And I'm a huge fan of passion projects. In fact, our podcast that we do every week is a passion project. You know, we do it for the love of the game. So I'm big on supporting things like that. So for that reason, I am going to hop onto the side of the fence that says this should be kickstarted. And I hope that they make it.
Excellent. I knew I could con you. And that being said, all of you in the chat, feel free to issue your determination as well, whether you think this should be kicked out of here or kickstarted. And if you care to elaborate, you are more than welcome to. We'd love to hear your opinions on it.
Sweet. Well, do we have double Kickstarters this week, or is that our sole Kickstarter for the week?
Nope, we've just got one for this week. I guess I have another one, but I was hoping to save it for next week.
Let's save it, dude. I'm cool with that. Whatever you want, man. Sweet. Well, I think it's time for our... Are we taking votes, or we want to wait a minute for people to vote, or should I move on to the next...
You can go ahead and move on. Yeah.
Sweet. Fantastic. So our next segment is my favorite segment of the show. It's a segment called the Dummy of the Week. A segment of the show where we talk about someone who has done something stupid, idiotic, or downright dumb, and we make fun of them a little bit. So this story actually comes from Kotaku. And I'll skip the title once again, but let's see what happened in Anchorage this week with a dummy and his dumb friends. It says, Anchorage police were called to an apartment near the University of Alaska last Friday after a group of roommates got into a fight involving their fists, a knife, and a replica master sword. 22-year-old Jeremy Tazruk was arrested after the fight, which Anchorage Daily News reports he did not begin, escalated from some pushing and shoving into punches and an attack with a kitchen knife. Now, I don't understand how you go from pushing and shoving to punching to somebody pulling out a kitchen knife. My unwritten rule for fights, if a fight starts with blunt objects, it should end with blunt objects. Don't bring a knife to a fist fight. That's what I always say, Mac. You know I always say this. It's been something I've said since you've known me, and I've never said that before. But I'm saying it now, and that's my stance. So the article goes on to say, the melee also included Tazruk grabbing a replica Legend of Zelda Master Sword off the wall and, quote, using its sheath to strike the man, identified only as TP. I gotta know if TP stands for toilet paper. I feel like it does. It just seems like it would have to. Accused of instigating the fight by attacking two of his roommates. Now here's my question. When he took the master sword off the wall, did he hold it above his head and say, da-da-da-da-da, you got the master sword. You can use its sheath to attack your roommate. You should not go alone. It's dangerous. The article goes on to say Tazruk is then accused of hitting TP, quote, multiple times with the sword itself, court documents pointing out. The edges of the sword were not sharp, but the tip was sharp. Now, I feel like if you own a master sword, you should make sure that it's sharpened at all times. I also feel like if you own a master sword, you should not use it to hit people. Like, that's just asking for trouble. Also, in Alaska, I would imagine that sword was probably frozen and probably very painful, even though it was blunt. So all these people should go to jail for their stupidity. It goes on to say the same documents say there was a bent sword on the floor next to the door when officers arrived at the scene. Now, I don't know how you could bend a metal sword by hitting somebody and have them still be alive. Like, if the sword is bent and you were using it to hit someone, they're probably not surviving and not living to tell this tale. Tazruk, who in addition to the sword hits is accused of stabbing TP with a kitchen knife, was arrested at the scene and charged with 4th-degree assault and reckless endangerment. How many degrees of assault are there, Maction? I didn't even know that it went above 3rd degree. I thought 3rd degree was the highest.
You know,
You don't gotta answer. I would just.
I don't know that. That's not my field, Mr. Nice Guy. In the fake law that I practice on television, that's not my field.
Well, kids, just so you know, if you own a master sword or any type of sword, and you are anything other than a samurai or Link himself, that sword is meant to be used for decoration. Don't attack your friends with it. Don't bring sharp objects to a fist fight. That's been our dummy of the week. Mac, back over to you, buddy.
Some people. Well, that being said, we're going to move on to the last official segment of the show, which is a little thing we like to call legalese. And in this segment, we talk about some of the interesting lawsuits, some of the historical lawsuits, or maybe just some of the things that could potentially change the way that we consume our video games. This one is a little bit less impact, but you may remember that some time ago I talked about Atari suing Nestle over Breakout, being that that Nestle made a Kit Kat, a Kit Kat branded version of Breakout that they were using for advertising purposes, and Atari took issue because they did not license it from them. Quick side note. Breakout was made, I believe was made at Atari by Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak. Although really, it's more fair to say that it was made by Steve Wozniak and Steve Jobs, helped. In a, I guess you'd say in a one of those. What are they called? Biographies. Yes. In a biography of that time, it turned out that Jobs was the one who was officially employed there, but Wozniak just kind of came with him because they were pals and they'd work on stuff together. And when they were making this Breakout game, they were offered extra money if they could do it with fewer chips necessary. And Wozniak did it in some crazy low amount of chips, and Jobs, as a result, was given a bonus that he never wound up sharing with Wozniak, that Wozniak didn't know about until like the 90s, until like late 90s, early 2000s, when the biography came out about the whole event. He had to learn from somebody else that Jobs had been holding out money on him, but that's neither here nor there. So, but Breakout, title as it was meant as a sort of, I guess you'd say, like a follow-up, spiritual successor to Pong. But yeah, so Atari filed that lawsuit several months back, and they have reached an amicable settlement. The amicable settlement, so it didn't wind up going to court at all, as a lot of these things don't. It just involved some sort of a meeting, a conversation, and I imagine some very large amount of money was exchanged hands. But the ad only ran in the UK and stopped running before Atari filed its lawsuit, according to Nestle. But yeah, they went ahead. They reached their settlement, paid out, and everybody's friends again. And
this is a first.
A first?
In our segment where they come to an amicable settlement.
I normally don't mention it as a sort of front thing, but I have to admit that because I mentioned it before, I felt like I had to give the conclusion here that we didn't have a judgment, we didn't have a ruling, just an amicable settlement outside of court with crazy amounts of money. I am sure the exact amount is not disclosed. But yeah, it happens from time to time, these sorts of things. But don't worry, next week I'm sure we'll have somebody else who has to bring the gavel down on the next segment.
That's fantastic. Well, guys, that has been Legalese. And Mac, I think that has been our show as well, minus the bonus segment that we do each week, which is called What We've Been Watching and What We've Been Playing. And we're going to do that right now and discuss what we've been watching and what we've been playing. And in the chat, we like for you guys to let us know the stuff you've been watching, whether it be YouTube, Blu-rays, movies, Netflix, whatever, and the stuff you've been playing, whether it's Xbox, PS4, PC, on your phone, on your Nintendo Switch, whatever it is, let us know, because we're always looking for cool, nerdy media to check out. Mac, do you want to start us off with what you've been watching, what you've been playing, man?
Absolutely. Well, for what I've been playing, Mr. Nice Guy, I got a hankering lately for some Hero Quest. And I found it a little bit difficult to play because I didn't have anybody to play with. So I went looking on my tablet for something in the Google Play Store and found a reasonable approximation, and have been playing a little bit of not quite Hero Quest on my tablet, which has been kind of fun. It's scratched an itch for me. As for what I've been watching, I, not that long ago, started in on a series called The Magicians, or maybe it's just Magicians. No, I think there's a "the" there. It is a sci-fi original. Again, I do take issue with the use of original when it comes from a book. Just saying. If it was only made for your thing, anyway, that being said, The Magicians presents itself as this sort of grown-up, adultish Harry Potter take, magic and all that jazz. And the entire time, I was really on the fence. The entire time viewing it, I was very on the fence about it. It did some things very well, like, for example, we had... there was everything does that episode where it turns out to be like all a dream or it's all in your head thing. They did that very well. Arguably, it was one of the best treatments of it's all in your head, you're stuck in a dream type things. Thought it was fantastic. But that's really just not enough to save it in its entirety, It might do some things well, but overall just really had trouble. I hardly cared about any of the characters in the first season. The ones that I did care about were side characters. They did in the second season give them more screen time, but it was like these people, because from the books, the main characters are central and we're going to be stuck with them instead of just the adventures of the side characters who are maybe not more likable but certainly more interesting. So yeah, that's what I've been watching, what I've been playing lately. Mr. Nice Guy, how about you?
Man, so you know what game I've been playing, and I gotta hold it up for the people to see who are here for the live show. I've been on my PlayStation 4 playing Monster Hunter World. And Mac, this is the game that I've been waiting for probably, let's see, I started Monster Hunter about 7 years ago, the Monster Hunter Try. That's when I got into the series. And at the time, playing it on the Wii, I was like, this would be so much easier to play if we had voice chat, if it was in HD, if there were all these other enhancements, a better controller. And now we have it. We have it on PS4. And it's absolutely fantastic, and it's deep. There's so much to do. It's a beautiful, beautiful game. And I played a little bit with Pazzy 160 earlier this week. We had a blast. So I've been all about that. I haven't even turned my Xbox on the past few days because I've been all about that Monster Hunter World. And yeah, what else have I been playing? I got a little bit of Fortnite in. And I believe, and I played some Mario Galaxy with the kids and, of course, some ARMS. Now, as far as what I have been watching, I've been finishing up this last season of Arrow that is on Netflix. Because I'm really into grilling and stuff, I've been watching some Food Network stuff, believe it or not. I love grilling, Mac. It's such a fun, relaxing hobby, grilling meat and smoking meat. So I've been watching some barbecue shows on the Food Network. Also, there's this show called Beat Bobby Flay, which has nothing to do with gaming, but it's very entertaining if you like cooking. So I've been watching some of that. And what else? Oh, we've been rewatching the Maze Runner movies. Mac, have you seen any of those movies?
I saw the first Maze Runner movie, but that's it.
What'd you think?
It seemed fairly generic.
Really? Okay, I thought it was good. We're going to go back and rewatch the second one as well because the third one just came out in theaters. So we're rewatching them so we can watch the finale. And that's what I've been watching and what I've been playing. Now, Mac, we got some people in the chat who want us to know the stuff they've been into. And that's all you, man.
Okie dokie. So, we've got some, let's see, we've got some Game of Thrones Season 7, Star Trek Discovery, and some extra affirmation about the magicians not being so great. As for games, we've got Subnautica. Oh, sorry, I missed the Grand Tour on Amazon. Games, we've got Subnautica, Dragon Ball Fighter Z, Monster Hunter World, and Dissidia Final Fantasy, and and Shadow of the Colossus. PS4 4K upgrade is coming out next week. I believe a couple of people have mentioned that through the course of the show. Shadow of the Colossus is definitely a beloved game and one that's been recommended to me by many different people. So I'm sure it'll be enjoyable when it comes out next week. Oh, and watching Cops reruns.
Yeah, because sometimes
bad
you're
boys,
like,
bad
I can't
boys.
remember.
What you gonna do? What you gonna do when they? One of the best episodes of the X-Files, by the by, they did a crossover with Cops, and they filmed it in the style of Cops in, a city. It was very interesting. It was quite funny. But sorry, I digress. You were saying, Mr. Nice Guy.
I was just gonna say sometimes you gotta watch Cops reruns because you know the criminal, you recognize the criminal, but you don't remember what happened at the end of the episode. So you've just got to watch it to find out, are they gonna get caught or are they gonna escape on camera? Because sometimes that happens, and actually that never happens. I'm being sarcastic. I don't know why anyone would watch Cops reruns.
No, there was this really fun episode of Cops once where they where I don't know why they even put it up there, but I believe there were 4 people in a car. They were fleeing police. I think that they didn't catch any of them. Maybe they might have caught one, but they lost the vehicle and the 3 other people because it went into a park. Everybody bailed out, but yeah, at the end of it, they were doing their recap. The suspects, we got him, that sort of thing. And they couldn't find the car, and they couldn't find all of the people who were running, which was just hilarious to me that they, that they still aired that bit.
I know, that's what I'm saying, because it makes them look dumb. And it's not like their faces are blurred out in real life. So if they have video of them running away, they can just go back and watch the video and find them. You know what I mean? So anyway, Mac, I say we wrap this bad boy up. What do you think?
Absolutely. We sure appreciate everybody coming around and joining us for episode 58 of Two Nerds in a Pod. This has been a fantastic show. In large part, and mostly, let's face it, it's all because of Mr. Nice Guy. But there's a little part of it. There's a little bit of it, just a small amount, that was due to viewers like you.
We'll see you guys next week. Same bat place, same bat time, same bat rhymes. Keep it nerdy, y'all. Deuces. Love ya.